thank you very much for the opportunity to join you at this, the 72nd Memorial Day observance here at Fullerton. And thanks in particular for honoring the Marine Corps this year. More importantly, to Mr. Ed Paul and the American Veterans Memorial Association, thanks for all you do to ensure that Fullerton hosts such a special Memorial Day observance each year. You know, not long ago I heard that a group of school children was asked to explain what Memorial Day means. And the most common response was, "That's the day the pool's open." You know, those children clearly weren't from Fullerton, California, or the surrounding community. People here know that today is about more than pool openings, it's about more than barbecues, it's about more than taking advantage of sales at the mall. The people of Fullerton should really be very proud of this event. It reflects the community's commitment to remember those that have answered the call to military service and made the ultimate sacrifice. It also reflects Fullerton's commitment to pass down important traditions from one generation to the next. You know, the people of Fullerton should be equally proud that that tradition of service continues. You know, as we pause and remember the members of the community who gave their lives for our country, a number of local sons and daughters serving on active duty around the world. And those from Fullerton joined thousands of others, many of whom are in harm's way in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. As we observe this ceremony, for those no longer with us, I'd ask you to keep those still serving in your thoughts and prayers as well. And I would ask the family members of those who are serving on active duty away from home to please stand at this time. You know, today's generation of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are proudly following in the footsteps of an unending line of American citizens who have answered the call to duty. Since George Washington cobbled together an army, 42 million Americans have served the colors to ensure that citizens of our nation could live their lives and raise their children in freedom and in peace. You know, some supported the birth of the Revolution at Lexington and Concord. Others fought to hold the Union together at Antietam and Gettysburg, or to roll back tyranny at Iwo Jima or Normandy. Their successors carried the colors in Korea, Vietnam, Lebanon, Panama, and Kuwait. Today's warriors are taking on terror and extremism that has touched our shores and eroded our sense of security. The story of those 42 million who have served in uniform is the story of our nation. And along the way, 1 million have given the last full measure. In the last century, over 100,000 lost their lives in World War I, over 400,000 in World War II, almost 40,000 in Korea, and over 58,000 in Vietnam. And more recently, we've lost over 4,000 in Iraq, and as of last week, over 1,000 in Afghanistan. You know, those statistics are compelling, but they don't begin to capture the enormity of the sacrifice. For the loss of each individual brings untold anguish and grief. Those statistics represent sons and daughters. They represent brothers and sisters. Those statistics represent children who grew up never knowing their fathers or their mothers. They represent lives shattered, hopes and dreams never realized. You know, this year, as you conduct this Memorial Day event and honor your Corps of Marines, I'd like to introduce you to two Marines that I've had the honor to serve with. Both Marines deployed to Iraq with the 1st Marine Division out of Camp Pendleton right down the road. And I share their particular stories because I'm committed to, like many other Marines, honor their memory. But I also want to share their stories just for a moment this morning to get beyond the statistics and to remind us all of the kind of men and women that we honor today. First Marine that I want to introduce you to is a young lieutenant by the name of Matt Lynch. Matt was a graduate of Duke University, a tremendous athlete, an accomplished NCAA swimmer, and a dynamic leader. He had a great sense of humor. In fact, his sense of humor was often irreverent. And I was on the receiving end of that irreverent sense of humor on more than one occasion. In 2003, Matt deployed to Iraq as an infantry platoon commander with the 1st Marine Division. He deployed from January to October of that year. In the spring of 2004, the 1st Marine Division was back in Iraq and took a number of casualties in and around the first Battle of Fallujah. And we called back to Camp Pendleton at the time and we said, hey, we need some volunteers to come forward as combat replacements. Matt Lynch unhesitatingly volunteered and joined us in Iraq for what was then his 2nd deployment to Iraq. He served until July of that year. First thing he did when he came back was to go back to his old platoon and check on his Marines. And he found out that they were going to now deploy again to Iraq in about a month. His original plans had him going home on leave to visit his family for 30 days, but instead he went to the battalion commander and he said, hey sir, my Marines are going back to Iraq, I would like to go back with them. Battalion commander, of course, knew of Matt's leadership. He knew that he needed a lieutenant and agreed to take Matt back. The next thing Matt did was call his father. He said, hey Dad, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it home to see the family. I'm going back to Iraq in about 30 days. And his dad said, Matt, you've been in Iraq twice now. It's somebody else's turn. Matt said, Dad, these are my Marines. These are my friends. What I know can help keep these men alive. The job's not done. I have to go back. You were a Marine, Dad. You understand. Matt went back to Iraq. By all accounts, he inspired his Marines. There's no doubt that he kept many of them alive. In November of 2004, while leading his Marines, Matt was killed by an improvised explosive device on the streets of Ramadi. Second Marine that I'd like to introduce you to is Lance Corporal Philip West. Philip is a graduate of Vintage High School in Napa, California, where he played football and served as a lifeguard. He was a great mentor to his younger brother Kyle and his sister Megan. He was also compelled to make people laugh and would often go to extremes for shock value. In 2004, he was leading a squad in clearing buildings in Fallujah when he was killed. A few years ago, I and a number of his fellow Marines were in his parents' living room talking to his mom and dad. And his dad looked at me and he said, General, I don't understand. Why didn't you just destroy the building? Why did my son have to lose his life in clearing that building? Before I had a chance to answer, his squad leader, a sergeant, said, Sir, he wouldn't have wanted it that way. He cared about the innocent people of Iraq. And although he was ferocious in the face of the enemy, his happiest moments were when he cleared a building and found innocent lives that he could help remove from the battlefield. Stories of these two young Marines are characteristic of thousands of others who have given so much. You know, there was a time when folks wondered whether this generation of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines was as tough as their predecessors. There was a time when folks wondered about the commitment of this generation. There was a time when folks wondered, do we still make them like we used to? Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can tell from just these two brief stories of Matt Lynch and Philip West, this generation has truly stepped up to the challenges on their watch, and they absolutely have what it takes. You know, what I really hope is that these stories remind us that what's most important about all the men and women we remember today, those who remember from all the wars, is not so much how they died, but how they lived. They were people who cared about something larger than themselves. They were people who truly embodied the most important values and traditions of our communities: courage, honor, commitment, loyalty, and self-sacrifice. If we truly want to honor the fallen from all of our conflicts, we'll do something today in addition to marking their graves with flags and flowers. Each of us will leave here today with resolve to strengthen our personal commitment to our nation and the values for which it stands. Each of us will leave here determined to, and maybe in some small way, serve our nation and our community in honor of those who have given their all. You know, I'd like to thank Fullerton again for remembering those who have given their lives in service, but also for those who still wear the uniform. I have to tell you, and I told the organizers last night, we've been at war for 9 years now. And 9 years ago, I think few people would have thought that our services would be in the great shape they're in after 9 years of conflict, or that the nation would come together in such a way to support those young Marines, soldiers, sailors, and airmen. But you know, those that are forward deployed, including those that are the children of those who stood up a little while ago, are focused on the task at hand because they know they don't need to turn around and look over their shoulder to see if there's support from the American people. They absolutely know there's support of the American people, and that's manifest in events like this in Fullerton, California. I cannot tell you what a difference that makes in the spirit and the will of our young people to do whatever our nation asks them to do. They do that because of the rock-solid foundation that exists with the people back home. It's an extraordinary thing for me to see this. It's an extraordinary thing for me to be a part of. And quite frankly, those that are forward deployed ask for a little more, and they deserve no less. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for the opportunity to join you here today. God bless each and every one of you, and Semper Fidelis.